Hi, I'm Ray Gessner with Chimney Sweeps International, and this is one of our technical videos for our chimney sweeps. This is called Draft Issues Masonry. All right, what it is that you've got a masonry fireplace and you've got a draft issue. How you know you might have a draft issue is that above the fireplace opening there might be smoke on the wall, smoke stained bricks, things like that. The homeowner might say, hey, my chimney has a problem and it's a bad draft. So the question is that what causes it, how to correct it, and what happens? How do you solve it? So there are different things that cause draft issues. Let's talk about a few of them. One is a fireplace opening. So how a fireplace draft is that the opening of the fireplace and opening of the liner has got to be a certain proportion, okay? And there's a lot of factors involved in it. There is the temperature of the outside, there's a temperature of the inside, there is the height of the fireplace, there's even whether that the liner itself has got little holes in it. Imagine sucking a straw up that's milk from a straw. If you've got holes in the straw, it's not gonna suck it up that well. So you might have holes in your liner. There's a whole bunch of different items that can affect draft in a chimney. That's one thing, and I'll start from the bottom to the top, is the fireplace opening. If you've got yourself a big opening and a small liner, then you can have draft problems. How you might be able to solve that is put a smoke guard. That you're essentially taking your fireplace opening and decreasing it. It's a second issue, now that we're talking about smoke guards, is that there's a distance from the damper to the bottom of the its opening of the firebox opening, or the top of the firebox opening itself. It's bottom of the lintel. It's got to be 8 inches. But the problem is that that's 8 inches minimum. It might need to be more. So what happens is that the smoke's going up and doing some weird stuff. If it comes and curls outside, then it could be a problem. So sometimes your distance isn't far enough and that it'll come back in the house. Make sure you got the 8 inches. If you need more, you can put a smoke guard and it drops it down a little bit too. Third issue of a non-drafting fireplace is that you have a damper that doesn't open up properly. So back in the old codes, it says that the fireplace damper opening has got to be 90% of the damper opening itself. It has specific requirements for it, but all those codes got lost in translation. And what ends up happening is that these dampers don't open up far enough, and the draft goes up, got to curl around, got to do weird stuff, and it just takes a long time to draft. If it has that resistance, then what ends up happening is that it can back into the house. The fourth issue is your smoke chamber. Is your smoke chamber too straight or is it too horizontal? Codes call it to be at a 45-degree angle or less, but it also says that it can't go up a certain height. The height it can go up is the width of the fireplace. So you've got yourself a magic number that's going and trying to transition the damper to the liner itself. And on top of that, if you've got these unparged smoke chambers, it can have smoke hit these little corbels and bounce back down again. All this is resistance. The longer it takes to get out of a fireplace and get up through the liner, the quicker the flue gas drops. If it drops to a certain amount, then it's going to cause creosote built up. Next issue that can cause a draft problem is your smoke chamber. If the smoke chamber is corbelled and unparged, then the smoke can hit the little corbel of the bricks and come back down and cause a disturbance, and that'll decrease draft. The angle of the smoke chamber is another issue. If it's angled too low, then it'll block off the smoke chamber and come back down. If it's angled too high, it doesn't draft as well as if it just gets funneled up into the smoke chamber. Your liner is meant to draft it quicker because it's a smaller area and it's like a straw. So you want to kind of get it to the liner quicker if possible. The liner itself has problems. If you have gaps and holes in the mortar joint, then it's like putting gaps and holes in a straw, and that can decrease the amount of draft. Even the mortar joints in between the flue tiles are sometimes, it's not struck smooth on the inside. That's what the codes say. You're supposed to strike them smooth on the inside, because draft going up can hit these little pieces of mortar that's kind of excess out of there, not struck smooth, and that can add friction and decrease draft. The aspect ratio of the flue liner itself, the more it's like a circle, the better it is, because smoke travels up in a circle. So if you've got a long and wide flue liner, it's not as good as a square flue liner, or even better, a round flue liner. So the aspect ratio of your flue liner helps its draft. And finally, the chimney cap itself. A chimney cap decreases draft. As a matter of fact, most chimney caps are not code compliant. As a matter of fact, most chimney caps aren't even code compliant. They need to have a 4 times net-free area going around the chimney cap. Check that out next time you to measure the chimney cap you're installing. So those are the physical components of what affects draft. There are other components that affect draft too. It's other issues that affect draft of a chimney is the height of the chimney. Another issue of draft is a 2-10-3 rule. As you may have heard, that a chimney's got to be high enough that it extends 2 feet above 10 feet horizontal of anything around it. So that's the code, but it's not the science. So a long time ago, they said that the chimney has got to be 2 feet higher than the entire house. That's why you might go and take a look at chimneys and see this big gigantic chimney, and then you're looking at a house and you're like, why is this chimney sticking 20 feet out? Because if you take a look at the house a long ways away, it may be that the chimney's trying to stick up 2 feet or 3 feet higher than the house itself. So what does that do? Does that make sense or not? Well, actually what it is that the chimney is competing with air. The air wants to draft to the highest portion wherever it is. If you've got your attic that's closed up and sealed up, that kind of helps prevent air from flowing to different parts of your house. That's why they got little layers of air in between the attic and between the first floor. I mean, different things like that. But they do compete with each other. So keeping in mind that this 2-10-3 rule isn't perfect, and that if you have a draft issue, take a look at the whole concept of the house itself. Another issue is that hot air tends to draft quicker. So if you've got hot gases, they're going to rise quicker than cooler gases. So if you've got a chimney that's either not insulated or it's exposed to the outside elements and it's cooling real quick, and then its draft is going to be affected by that. Temperature of the air and temperature of the house. The difference in the temperature, it affects draft. So if you're burning on a hot day and it's smoking into your house, then that could be an issue, because actually on a hot day, air will draft. It'll have a negative draft inside of the house. That's why on hot days, people will smell their fireplace. They'll call you up and say, hey, how come my fireplace smells in the summer? It's because it has a negative draft. It's actually drafting down the chimney and getting past the damper and coming into the house. Other issues that might affect draft, it's wind-induced downdrafts. You have yourself little zones of called pressure zones. It's wind goes over a house, almost like how air goes over a airplane wing, and it can cause the different pressures, and that can cause to downdrafts going down a chimney or decreased draft. And finally, it's one thing that can affect draft is creosote buildup. It's imagine a smooth pipe, or one that's corroded with creosote, or one that is corroded with creosote so much it actually decreases the diameter of the pipe. So it's trying to draft through a smaller liner. It's also trying to draft through a friction-filled liner. It's trying to draft through a friction-filled liner with all the creosote built up. So creosote itself decreases draft. So why is draft so important? Draft is so important because if the smoke doesn't get out the chimney by 284 degrees temperature, then it's going to create creosote. The less creosote built up, less chance of chimney fire, less chance of problems. This has been your technical training on chimney draft. I'm Ray Guston with Chimney Sweeps International. Thanks for tuning in.